You remember who you used to be, not in general, specifically. The version of you that woke up early because you wanted to, that opened the Bible not out of obligation, but because something in you needed it, that prayed like the conversation was real, like someone was actually on the other side listening, responding, close. You remember what that felt like. And somewhere between then and now, that person got quiet. You didn't make a decision to stop. There was no moment where you said, "I'm done with this." It happened the way most slow losses happen. Gradually, then completely. And now you're standing in the gap between who you were and who you've become. And the distance feels larger than you know how to cross. You still believe in God. That's not the question. The question is why the version of you that knew how to reach Him feels so far away. Why prayer that used to feel like breathing now feels like a language you've almost forgotten. Why you can go through the motions, bow your head, close your eyes, say the words, and walk away feeling like you were talking to yourself. And the grief of that is something nobody seems to talk about. Not the grief of losing faith. The grief of losing the version of yourself that had it so naturally. That's what you're carrying. And it's heavier than doubt ever was. The worst part isn't the distance. It's that you remember the closeness. If you had never experienced what it felt like to pray with everything in you, to feel that something shifted in the room, that you were heard, that you were held, this wouldn't hurt the same way. But you did experience it. And now you compare every prayer to that. And every prayer loses. So you stop initiating. Not dramatically. Not with a declaration. You just start waiting for the feeling to return before you engage. And the feeling doesn't return. And the waiting becomes its own kind of distance. And then one day you realize it's been weeks since you prayed anything you actually meant. You've said the words at dinner. You've bowed your head in church. But the last time you were actually honest with God, completely unguarded, completely present, you can't remember when that was. And that realization sits in you like something cold. Because you know what that version of yourself felt like. You know the difference between performing faith and living inside it. And you're not living inside it anymore. And you don't know how to find your way back. Or whether the path back even exists. Or whether too much time has passed. Or whether God is even still there waiting. Or whether He moved on the way you almost did. Here's what nobody talks about when they talk about drifting from God. They make it sound like a moral failure. Like the version of you that stopped praying, made a series of bad decisions, and ended up somewhere you chose. But most people who lose their prayer life didn't choose to lose it. They got exhausted. They got disappointed. They prayed for something that mattered deeply, and the answer was silence or no, or something that looked nothing like what they needed. And they kept going for a while. They pushed through the dryness the way you're supposed to. And then one day, the pushing stopped. Not because they gave up on God, because they ran out of the emotional energy it takes to keep reaching towards someone who feels unreachable. That's not rebellion. That's depletion. And the version of you that stopped praying isn't a failure. It's a person who got tired in a season that asked too much. And the distance you're feeling right now, the gap between who you were and where you are, that gap isn't evidence that you're too far gone. It's evidence that something real was lost. And things that were real can be found again. Not always in the same form, but found. What if the version of you that stopped praying never actually left? What if it just went quiet? Because here's the thing about identity. It doesn't disappear when circumstances suppress it. It waits. The person you were when prayer felt natural, the one who knew how to be honest with God, who knew how to sit in His presence without performing, that person is still in you. They didn't leave when the dryness started. They went underground, the way a river goes underground in a drought. The water doesn't disappear. It finds a different path. And the drought you've been living in, the emotional, spiritual, relational drought that made prayer feel pointless, it hasn't destroyed what was there. It's been waiting for the conditions to change. And here's what changes conditions. Not trying harder, not more discipline, not another reading plan or prayer journal or early morning alarm. Honesty. The most direct, unfiltered, unglamorous honesty you have. Telling God exactly where you are instead of performing where you think you should be. That's the thing the version of you that prayed naturally always knew. That the conversation only works when it's real. And real means starting from exactly where you actually are. Even here, especially here, Think about a friendship that went quiet, not because of a fight, not because of a betrayal, just because life got heavy and both people got busy and the conversations got shorter, and then the call stopped, and then months passed. And you think about that person sometimes. You miss them, but the longer the silence goes, the harder it feels to break it. Because now there's an awkwardness that wasn't there before, a gap that needs to be acknowledged, and you don't know how to start. So you don't, and the gap grows. Not because you stopped caring, because you didn't know how to walk back in after being gone that long. That's where you are with God. Not estranged, not done, just standing at the door of a friendship you let go quiet. Not sure how to re-enter, not sure if the welcome is still there. And here's what's true about that friendship. He never stopped thinking about you. He never looked at the quiet and decided you were done. He's been on the other side of the door the whole time, not waiting for an explanation, not waiting for an apology that covers all the time you were gone, just waiting for you to knock, the way you used to, before you forgot you still could. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Not once. Not a moment of weakness he immediately corrected. 3 times, in front of witnesses, on the night it mattered most. And then the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered, and he went out and wept bitterly. That's not a small thing. Peter had walked with Jesus for 3 years. He had seen the miracles. He had heard the teaching. He had been called the rock on which the church would be built. And in one night, the version of himself that he thought was unshakable collapsed completely. And then Jesus died, and Peter had to live with that. The gap between who he had been and what he had done. The silence between the Peter who left everything to follow Jesus and the Peter who stood by a fire and said, "I don't know the man." And then the resurrection. And Jesus didn't track Peter down to confront him. He went to him on a beach with breakfast, and he asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" Not to punish him, to restore him, once for every denial, rebuilding what was broken with the same number of conversations it took to break it. And Peter, the version of Peter who had failed completely, was the one Jesus chose to feed his sheep, not despite the gap. After it, the distance you've created doesn't disqualify you. It's the exact territory where restoration happens. So let's name who you actually are. You are not someone who lost their faith. You're someone who lost their footing. And losing your footing is not the same thing as falling away. It means the ground shifted. It means the season got harder than your spiritual habits were built to handle. It means you're human in a way that honest people eventually have to admit. And the version of you that stopped praying, that version is not the real you. It's the version of you that was protecting itself from more disappointment, from more silence, from more reaching towards something and coming back empty. And that protection made sense at the time. But you don't need it anymore. Because what you're afraid of, that you've been gone too long, that the version of you that knew how to pray is too far from where you are now, that the welcome isn't still there, none of that is true. The welcome is still there. It was there on the beach with Peter. It was there in the far country when the prodigal son was still a long way off and the father ran. And it's here now, for the version of you that got tired, for the version of you that went quiet, for the version of you that's reading this right now, missing who you were, wondering if you can find your way back. You can, not by being who you were before, by being honest about who you are right now. That's enough to start. Before you go, I want you to do one thing. Type these words in the comments. I'm finding my way back. Not as a declaration that you've arrived, as a decision that you're moving. Because the version of you that stopped praying isn't gone. It's been waiting, and it doesn't need you to have it all figured out to come home. It just needs you to take one step. This one counts.